My name is Zhanna Nemtsova. I'm originally from Russia, but I moved to Germany 3.5 years ago. I'm a journalist, not by training. My major is world economics. So I worked in Russia for RBC television, which used to be Russian Bloomberg. So I was a financial market commentator. I commented on financial markets and currencies and world economy and all the stuff like that. And then I moved to Germany to join Deutsche Welle. It's a German international broadcaster, and I have my own project there. The title is Nemtsova Interview, not really original. And I interview people, politicians and opinion makers around the world in English and in Russian for two departments, for the Russian and for the English departments. And also I founded the Boris Nemtsov Foundation for Freedom in Germany in honor of my late father, who was assassinated in Russia also more than 3 years ago in front of the Kremlin wall. So, it's a charity organization and we have a lot of projects, but it's gonna be a very long interview if I try to describe what we are doing with the foundation. Perpetrators were found. And they received very long prison terms. So perpetrators, if I understand you right, perpetrators are people who committed the crime, with their own hands. So 5 people of Chechen origin were convicted of having committed this crime. They were sent to prison. 4 of them really had a lot to do with that, and there was enough evidence that was presented in court. There are doubts about the 5th suspect because they at the court not enough evidence were presented. The problem is to find organizers and, most importantly, masterminds. So that's the biggest challenge of this investigation, as well as the acknowledgement that that was a politically motivated assassination, and that's why we call it an assassination. It's known in the world everywhere, so people don't have any doubts about it. But the official investigation doesn't want to acknowledge this known fact, because if they do this, they will, if I would say even more, if they had done this, they will never do this. That would have meant that in Russia there are repressions against opposition. So that's the problems to be solved. But I'm not sure that in the near future. But I think that we will, at some point of time, we will get a lot of information which we now don't have, because we don't have any whistleblowers. It's a very closed system, the Russian state. So at some point of time, I think that people who possess knowledge about this crime will share it with the investigative team, or with me, or with my lawyers. It's a difficult question to answer, but I'm not sure that it's gonna be it's gonna happen under Putin's leadership, but I'm not sure that it's gonna happen after Putin, because it depends on who will come into power and whether this person will have the so-called political will and to let this happen. So that's why I'm not talking about the near future. And I believe that if our next leader, our next country's leader, has the political will and acknowledges the importance of of the fact that political assassinations should not happen in our country, then we will have a lot of information. So of course, under this system, it's barely impossible. It's not a surprise for me. It has never been a surprise for me not to have enough information, but it's very. Of course, I would like to know the truth, and it doesn't matter for me how the truth might look like, but the truth is important in any investigation. And of course, if you don't know the details, if you don't have enough information, you cannot understand fully how it all happened. And it's awful that this information is closed. It was created, it was established in Germany to pay tribute to my father and to maintain his political legacy. He was a liberal politician in Russia. Of course, it's very important to stress that under the German tax code, we are not allowed to be involved in any political activities, so it's a charitable organization. So we have a number of things which are in line with my father's view. I believe I can ask him. We have the prize, the Boris Nemtsov Prize for courage in fighting for democratic values in Russia. So we awarded 3 people, among them absolutely different people. It's not an elite club. So it was Lev Schlossberg, whom you might know. He is a regional politician and a journalist who was the first to report on the paratroopers killed in the eastern part of Ukraine. So it was at least circumstantial evidence of the Russian involvement into the war in Ukraine. So the second winner was Eldar Dadin, who was the first one to receive a real prison term for one-man protests. And he revealed the practice of torture in Russian prisons. And the third one is Nadezhda Mityushkina. She made an enormous contribution to maintain a makeshift memorial on the Bolshoi Moskvoretsky bridge where my father was killed. So I think that's important, and this prize has a monetary value, and people could fund their lives or their activities, because it's very difficult to earn money when you're involved in any activism inside Russia. People decide differently on how to spend this money. And it is a legacy, because my father was a brave person. Everybody knows this, and we support bravery, because it's quite a rare quality right now in Russia because of the mounting fears to speak up or to do something which is not which is challenging for the government. Secondly, that the Boris Nemtsov Forum, it's the annual event. It's the biggest, by the way, event about Russia, which is held outside Russia. So we invite Russian, Ukrainian, American, European politicians, opinion leaders, and also cultural figures. And what's the unique about the forum is that on the 9th of October, that's my father's birthday, we have a speech on freedom and individualism, and we invite a prominent writer or another person to speak on this. And this time we decided to invite Kirill Gavarun, who is based in the United States, in Los Angeles. He's one of the most known and influential theologists from Ukraine, and he believes that there are no contradictions between Orthodox Church, between Christianity and the Orthodox Church and democratic values. So he's going to speak about this, and you know that he is archimandrite. I don't know whether I pronounced this word correctly, in archimandrite. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, but I think that's very important because I think that we are witnessing a very important thing in the Christian world as Ukraine is struggling to get independence from the Russian Orthodox Church. I think that what is important right now is to support education. It's what we can do under current circumstances. So we actually this year in February launched the Boris Nemtsov Center for the Study of Russia in Prague in cooperation with Charles University, which is the biggest university in the Czech Republic. We are cooperating on this, so we are thinking how to develop it in a better way. Thank you for the invitation here at the Kennan Institute, so I can learn how you develop your center. It's very useful for me. And we had the Boris Nemtsov School of Journalism and Cultural Studies. It was for the first time when we held it, and I was leading this school. I led the school, and we trained 30 journalists from Russia, the post-Soviet countries, the United States and Europe. So we brought them together, and it was in Russian. So it was obligatory for non-Russian participants to be fluent in Russian. So we create a community of young journalists, not really accomplished ones. Some of them are, but not all of them. And we educate them, and we try to open some opportunities for them. So I think that's what we can do. It's not about major changes. It cannot be achieved without political reforms, but it's what we can do in the meantime. I don't know how long this in the meantime will last. It's difficult to predict. So education is the key factor. It's what we should do. Of course, it should be scaled up. We don't have the opportunity to do it now, but probably in the future. It's the political choice of our government, and we as voters, as citizens, we exercise no influence on our government because we don't have elections. So, on the other hand, the sanctions that were introduced, and I believe will be introduced, they of course contribute to the process of isolation, of financial isolation, of educational isolation, of cultural isolation. It's a process. It's the political choice of Russia, and of course the sanctions. They have this effect on our state, but still. I think that we cannot speak of an isolation of an Iranian model of isolation. So we cannot speak about this because Russia is is very rich in natural resources, and the world is dependent, especially Europe, is dependent on our gas, oil, and nickel. You can see that Norilsk Nickel was the leading producer of nickel and other precious цветные металлы, не знаю как будет, and other metals. It was not sanctioned. It hasn't been sanctioned so far. So still there is this reliance on Russia in terms of natural resources. Of course, we are part of the globalized financial world, and we have, of course, free internet. You can argue whether it's totally free or not, but nonetheless, still we can enjoy this liberty in Russia more than the Chinese, at least. So we cannot. I think, and we have no travel restrictions. I mean, massive travel restrictions. There are some travel restrictions imposed on some categories of people who work for the government or for any secret services, secret agencies, which we have in Russia, or for the military. I think that yes, we cannot speak about full isolation, but we can speak that the outcome I believe, is that we will, as a country, we will lag behind in terms of technological advance, in terms of educational advance. That's bad for the country. It's obvious. The sanctions were not imposed because of the autocratic regime that we have in Russia. It was imposed in connection with the military operation in Ukraine. And now, as far as I can understand, the United States imposed some sanctions and working on other round package of sanctions in relation to the alleged interference of Russia into the American elections. So they do not, the free world does not sanction autocrats for being autocrats. That's funny because it's not the task of any government. So they sanction for breaking the international order, or for breaking some agreements, or for, in the case of the United States, for the meddling into the election. In terms of how efficient they are. Have they ever been really efficient? I don't believe so. In terms of reaching the goals, yeah. In terms of economic downturn, in terms of many other things. So they basically they achieve their goals which were not meant. So they didn't achieve the goals. I mean, these sanctions related to the Ukrainian military operation, it didn't stop the war in Donbass. It did not stop the war. I don't know. It's very controversial whether they helped not to. They stopped Russia from conquering other parts of Ukraine. There are different opinions regarding this issue. I don't want to. I'm not an expert on that, but we don't have any peace in the eastern part. So that means that they are not efficient. Very easy. I don't know about the efficiency of these new packages, because if you look on the Kremlin list that was published in January, it rose. It led to a lot of questions. Who drafted this list? Why these people were included on that list? Why people who left Russia a decade ago appeared on the list? So you have to be very careful. And second, important is the implementation. So I think that first you introduce the sanctions, then some people, if these are targeted sanctions, try to circumvent these sanctions, and there are a lot of tools to do so. For example, if you look at the Ukrainian statistics, you will see that the biggest investor into the Ukrainian economy is Russia for the first half of the year. How come? And the Russians, I don't know whom, they mainly allocated these sums into financial and insurance sectors. I think that's how they try to circumvent sanctions. It's awful. So the implementation of sanctions is an important thing to be thought of. How you monitor, how you implement, how you control, not just political decision to do so. So it's a very difficult instrument to achieve the goals. I'm not speaking about good or bad. I'm just looking at the facts and not efficient. So I'm speaking like Putin right now, but yes, in terms of achieving the goal of peace in Ukraine. I'm a person who likes to set up the goals, career goals, and to achieve these goals. In the Russian politics, you cannot either set or achieve any goals under the current regime. So it's it's like a venture, yeah. If you try to make comparisons, yes, with the world of finance. I'm not a venture capitalist in terms of politics. I think Alexei is a venture capitalist, and I wish him the best of luck. It's a very difficult choice, but I think that what I don't like about politics and about lots of politicians, that it lacks expertise. So they say things which their voters want to hear from them, and it lacks objectivity. That's why there is a clear line between politicians and experts. And politicians are fighting for power, and they have to be a bit biased on some things. I'm not a person like this. I try to be, of course, I'm subjective because I have my own set of values, but I want to look and to say, yes, that's where the truth lies, and to be objective and not to be extreme, because you have to be, yes, you have to be a little bit you have to choose one of the of the extremes in your analysis. That's what I don't like. With journalism, it's very different. And yes, I'm a very bad politician, and I think that my father actually was very objective, and that's one of the reasons, because he was not that popular. He was popular in the 90s as the governor of Nizhny Novgorod, but and he's popular right now. But when he offered objective analysis of the consequences of the actions taken by Putin in 2007, in the midst of economic boom in Russia, nobody listened to him. And when he talked about the war between Russia and Georgia back in 2008, and he said about the and he actually predicted everything that actually happened in a decade, nobody listened to him. And that's very, psychologically, it's very difficult. If you are truthful and you have this vision, nobody listens to you. Or you have to make a choice and to be a little bit less analytical. And that's the clue to becoming probably a very powerful or influential politician. So I don't want to be a politician. In the short run, I have no plans like this, because it's very, I want to be able to find a job, so I can come to Russia just to live, but I can't earn money in Russia and to do the things that I'm involved in and which I am interested in. That's why not in the short run, and we will see in the long run if there is a window of opportunities, as German Gref likes to put it, the chief executive officer of Sberbank, Russian leading bank. So if there is a window of opportunities, I will rethink my current my current life.